flown by the Wolf Prey's sister, Princess Daenerys Targaryen. R'hllorian was a dragon so large, that as it took to the air, its wingspan created a shadow that covered the entirety of Maidenpool, and its fangs were as long as swords. Whilst many men were frightened that day to face that enormous dragon, it was Prince Prydane's undaunted presence and charismatic speeches which stirred the hearts of all men that day and gave them the courage they needed to face an army as great as that which met them that day at Maidenpool. Prince Prydane ordered 4 large bales of hay to be placed in front of their army as the Wolf Prey's armies marched toward them. The bales of hay were set alight, and as the fires grew, the smoke was blown by the wind toward the approaching enemy armies, already tired and thirsty from the marching in a hot summer's day. This tactic caused chaos amongst the enemy's ranks, where many fainted from the smoke or were confused by the smoke blocking their sight. And many horses were frightened by the smoke, and some even threw down their riders and fled the battlefield. And just as enemy officers commanded soldiers to douse the fires with their waterskins, Prince Prydane ordered for their archers to unleash clouds of arrows, crossbow bolts and javelins on the enemy. Before they had even begun to charge at them, hundreds and thousands of the enemy were shot down and their ranks were broken and divided, giving the undefeated Prince of the Wolfswood the opportunity to charge. He personally led a charge at their disorganized ranks, cutting down a great many men before the rest of the front lines of the enemies of the Wolf Prey got to grips with the many men of the Wolf Prey. But whilst they smashed into their infantry, their cavalry were forming at their rear, getting ready to flank our infantry. However, Prince Prydane had anticipated this and kept their cavalry hidden in the nearby woods to await his command from Benfred Tallheart. And when he came, Joranos Magai, Oberyn Martell, Aegon Targaryen, Stannis and Fortis Baratheon, Brynden Tully, Jason Mallister, Elbereth and Harold Arryn, Roose and Domeric Bolton, Mark, Ricard, Roose and Roger Ryswell led the cavalry charge on the enemy's flanks and rear. And it was in this cavalry charge that broke their flanks. Joranos cut down the Wolf Prey's childhood friend, Richard Longmouth, Harold Arryn defeated Loras Tyrell, and Jaime Lannister was knocked out by the charge of Fortis Baratheon's horse into him. Though the battle was now going badly for the Wolf Prey's armies, Providence seemed to come when Princess Daenerys flew R'hllorian into the skies, and she was determined to kill just one man that day if that was the last thing that she did, Prince Prydane. She spotted him atop her dragon, and he saw her also. Knowing that she would want to avenge her brother and the 2 dragons she brought into this world, he let her chase father him as he took a horse and rode back to Northern Lines. But as he did so, R'hllorian burned over 500 men with her great fiery breath as she flew after him. But as she flew directly above him, the northern ballista fired at her, as Prince Prydane had planned. Because of her immense size, it was difficult to miss this enormous dragon, and so 8 bolts had found their mark into the monstrously massive dragon. Whilst it wounded the dragon, it still lived and chased after Prince Prydane as he rode away. Luckily for him, one ballista had struck at the armpit of R'hllorian, preventing her from flying any further and forcing her to land. As she landed, Prince Prydane took no chances and charged straight at the great dragon, slicing at her face, and as she recoiled, he threw her rider back from off of her spine. Before the dragon could breathe fire at him or ensnare him with her enormous jaws and fangs, Prince Prydane sliced at her face once more and then impaled her through her brains and skull. This time, the last dragon in the world was at last dead. Princess Daenerys, infuriated by the death of her last dragon, faced a Prince Prydane with her spear, leveling it at him to throw it. But because of tears in her eyes, her vision was blurred and her spear narrowly missed the Prince of the Wolfswood. Wanting to kill her for the men she had burned with R'hllorian, Prince Prydane pointed ice at her, but 2 knights of the Kingsguard, Drold Hightower and Balon Swan, protected their charge and attacked him. Whilst Prince Prydane killed them both, Daenerys Targaryen attempted to flee, only to be confronted by Edmure Tully. Edmure Tully took revenge for his family by killing her, shouting "a sister for a sister," directed at Rhaegar the Wolf Prey. The Battle of Maidenpool, otherwise known as the Great Battle, is remembered as the greatest battle in all of the world's history. Never has there been such great armies that could fill the entire battlefield in any battle across the world. 120,000 men fought 150,000 that day, over 250,000 men. 9,000 men died fighting for the North's independence and Aegon Targaryen's claim that day, as opposed to 82,000 fighting for the Wolf Prey. After the battle's end, Aegon Targaryen took court in Maidenpool, accepting oaths of fealty from the Lords of Dorne, the Riverlands, the Stormlands and the Vale that had fought for his claim that day, whilst all nobles whom had fought against him were taken prisoner and kept in the cells of Maidenpool, awaiting his judgment after the war's end. During this court session, Prince Quentin Martel, second child of Prince Doran Martel, insulted Lord Edmure Tully as he was about to name his one and only condition for House Tully's loyalty and fealty. This insult to Lord Tully infuriated the great warrior, whom grabbed the foolish Dornish boy and reminded him that he was the Knight of the Blue Hood and that he would never again hear insults about his noble house after a lifetime of enduring them from all those whom mocked he, his family, his father and his sister. The armies of the North and Aegon marched for King's Landing, still reeling from the defeat they suffered, but were unwilling to admit defeat and surrender peacefully, expectant that their remaining soldiers would fight to the death for their survival and willing to gamble all lives of the small folk of King's Landing just so that they might continue to reign over their kingdom. To prevent a long and bloody siege, Prince Prydain sent his youngest brother, Rickon, Lord Giantspan, his sons Torred and Dormund, and a dozen climbers to climb the walls and open the Iron Gate whilst all attention of the city was diverted to the King's Gate, where Prince Prydain wanted them to think that they would attack. Their plans were changed when the Wolf Prey stood from the walls of King's Gate to negotiate with King Eddard, Prince Prydain and his son and daughter, whom he had cast aside in favour for his cruel Lannister wife and her children. The Wolf Prey was unwilling to admit his mistakes and that the deaths of his siblings, their dragons and the deaths of hundreds of thousands in this war were all because of King Eddard and Rhaegar the Wolf Prey. But he panicked and fled when he heard a scream from the Iron Gate that it was opening. Because of this, Lord Giantspan opened the King's Gate and the armies stormed inside before the garrison of King's Landing could mount a proper defense. The garrison laid down their weapons and surrendered rather than fight and die for a lost cause. At the Red Keep, the gates were battered open and at the throne room, it was only then, that the Wolf Prey admitted to his mistakes and attempted to make peace with the North and offered to recognize Northern independence and pay them millions from his treasury. He even tried to bring his children Aegon and Rhaenys to his side by claiming that he had always known that they were his true-born children and that he only sought to protect them from Cersei Lannister. His stupidity was seen clearly and Prince Prydain killed the evil coward by beating him and throwing him onto his beloved Iron Throne, impaling him on the swords of warriors and kings that were once enemies of Aegon the Conqueror. For her crimes to House Stark and her cruelty to her father, Princess Arya Stark grabbed the evil Cersei Lannister and strangled her until the life fled from her. Whilst Prince Tyrese and Princess Maegil were treated fairly, Prince Jaehaerys was put under arrest and taken to the Black Cells. Aegon was now crowned king of the Six Kingdoms and he accepted oaths of fealty from all those whom fought for his father. He even agreed to marry Maegari Tyrell and make her his queen. But most important of all, he renounced all claims to Winterfell and to the north and recognized King Eddard as king in the north. As for his brother, Jaehaerys, he sent him into permanent exile to Casterly Rock, where he was to never marry nor have children and never set foot out of Casterly Rock. He didn't last long in this exile, for 2 years after his arrival at Casterly Rock, he attempted to escape to a secret dock in the rock, only to fall down the rocks and break his arms to the extent that he was unable to save himself from drowning. Since Aegon's coronation, there never has been any attempts to conquer the north by the southerners. Aegon's children Aemon, Rhaenyra and Maegor have wisely been taught that to invade the north would be absolute folly, and rightly so. For it was in the War of Wolves and Dragons, that 250,000 people had died, whether warriors, knights, lords or small folk. Whilst this was a very costly war, it now stands as a symbol for future generations of southerners, that the north cannot and will not be conquered and that to invade it once more, would only cost the lives of thousands more, and in a war that the south has no chance in winning. Chapter 69, Epilogue. Chapter Text. Epilogue, new character portrait of Jessica Reynolds as Malva Christie, Outlander Online Outlander Online. Lyria Stark, Jessica Reynolds. Lyria. Sister. He is here. I just saw their banners from the walls. Toroya called from outside of her chambers whilst Ros combed her hair. He's here. Robard is here, Lyria thought, giddy with excitement. Lyria had spent 3 moons dreaming about her wedding to Robard Sewin after their first meeting at Grandfather Eddard's 60th name-a-day feast. And then, when father took mother, Lyria and Toroya on a tour around the north, it was at Castle Sewin, that the eldest son of Lord Cleesewin asked for father's permission and father talking to Lyria about it, that father announced Lyria and Robard's betrothal. Lyria looked up and down her dress of grey and white and with a cloak of a tiger pelt adorning her dress, a gift from her 7th and 10th name-a-day from Uncle Joranos. "You look beautiful, my princess." "Young Lord Sawin is a very lucky man," said Ros. "No, it is I who am lucky. I can remember just how envious and jealous the maiden ladies were of me at the news everywhere we had gone and when we returned to Winterfell." Lyria stood up and followed Ros to grandfather's solar, where mother and father were waiting. "Are you ready, Lyria?" asked father. "I am, yes, father," Lyria replied excitedly. Both mother and father hugged Lyria and father kissed her forehead and said, "Gods, you've grown so quickly. Your mother and I felt the same when you met Talisa." Grandfather Eddard commented from his seat. Lyria turned to grandfather Eddard and grandmother Ushara. "Are you excited to marry Robard, my dear?" "He's very handsome, isn't he?" asked grandmother Ushara. "Yes, grandmother," said Lyria with a shy smile as grandmother Ushara hugged her and commented how sweet she was. Grandfather and grandmother were the first to leave the solar and walked together, holding hands, down to the throne room and then to the courtyard, followed closely behind by mother and father and with Lyria and Toroya following behind. Lyria beamed as she saw the proud banners of House Sawin enter the courtyard, with dozens of Sawin men accompanying Lord Clee, Lady Edara and their 2 sons, Robard and Jon Oz, and their daughter Jaina. When she saw the face of Robard, Lyria felt her heart race as she remembered meeting him for the first time and she shivered as he kissed her hand and asked her to dance. But what drew her to him was his kindness and how gentle he was around her, which reminded Lyria of how father treated mother, Toroya and her. She knew then, when the night was over and she was in bed, that Robard was the man she wanted to wed. "My Lord Sawin," said grandfather as Lord and Lady Sawin, their family and their entourage knelt before grandfather and grandmother. "My king." "My queen," said Lord Sawin, whom kissed grandmother's hand and bowed his head once again to grandfather. "It is an honor to welcome you all to Winterfell on this wonderful occasion," said grandfather with a smile as a servant offered them bread and salt. Lord and Lady Sawin smiled as they greeted mother and father before they turned to Lyria. "My princess, an honor to meet you once again and to call you good daughter," said Lord Sawin. "The honor is all mine, my lord," Lyria replied as Lord Sawin kissed her hand. It was then that Robard walked to Lyria. She could see how his cheeks blushed with red, which she realized must have been due to some silly jest made by his younger brother Jon Oz, the future lord of Castle Sawin. "Welcome to Winterfell, Lord Robard," Lyria said sweetly. Robard blush was stronger as he kissed her hand. "Thank you, my princess," he replied shyly. 4 days after their arrival in Winterfell, all noble houses of the north had come for the wedding. Uncle Joranos had sailed from Volantis for the wedding. It came as a surprise that Aegon Targaryen, king of the south, had sent a letter of congratulations to Lyria. "What was Aegon Targaryen like, father?" "In the war?" Toroya asked when Lyria had shown them the letter. "Frightened of me, him and his sister both. But he was kind, he was merciful and he cared for all people, from small folk to nobles. He was raised wisely by your great aunt Elia," said father. "It's so strange to think that so many southerners were so scared of father in the War of Wolves and Dragons. He is the most gentle and kind man I know and I have never once seen him angry. How could he become such a fearful night terror of the southerners in that war?" Lyria was happy to see all of her cousins from houses Karstark, Seastook, Kelstark, Bolton, Marndaly, Mormont and Dustin arrive for the wedding. As she often did when her Mormont cousins came, she sparred with them using her sword and shield, as she had been taught by father and by Aunt Arya. On the day itself, father beamed and hugged Lyria when he saw her stand before him in her dress of Northern and Volanten design, made by her, Toroya, mother and also grandmother. "You look so beautiful, Lyria. Just promise me that you'll always be happy with him," he said. "I will be, father. I promise," she said. "Robard will never mistreat me. He is too gentle for that." Father escorted Lyria through the Godswood until they stood before the Heart Tree, the same one which father had once told her he sought guidance from the old gods before going to war and when he returned home after the war's end to give thanks to the gods. As he saw it, Lyria noticed how nervous he looked when he laid eyes on it, as though remembering a fearful memory. Before she could ask if all was well, he faced her again and beamed at her once more before Lord Sawin spoke. "Who comes before the old gods this day?" "Lyria of the House Stark comes here to be wed. A woman grown, true-born and noble." She comes to beg the blessings of the old gods. Who comes to claim her? Asked father. Robard of House Sawin. Who gives her? Asked Robard before he took a deep breath as he faced her. Prydain of House Stark, Prince of the Wolf's Wood. Her father said father before stepping back. Princess Lyria, do you take this man? Asked Lord Sawin. I take this man, said Lyria as she looked lovingly at Robard whilst he shyly smiled at her. You may now cloak the bride under your protection, said Lord Sawin. Both Lyria and Robard were of the same height, so she needed to bow her head down so that he could unfasten her stark cloak, and then he fastened a bridal white cloak over her, decorated with a Sawin battle axe and a stark direwolf both. As she stood straight again, she remembered to say the vows. I am his and he is mine. And as she said her vows, he said his. I am hers and she is mine. Robard reached out with both hands and held her face with his rough and calloused hands. He looked at her with grass-green and loving eyes as he smiled as his hands cupped her face. He leant in as she leant in and they kissed. Gods, his lips are so soft. He is so good at kissing. Both she and Robard beamed as they led the wedding procession back inside the Great Keep. The end.